When HMS Queen Elizabeth left Rosyth for her sea trials on Monday, I remembered my days as a little admiral and considered how some of my enthusiasms that were formed during that short-trousered age have never completely left me. This is an awkward residue of interest. It can lead to a protective attitude towards what the military historian Max Hastings, writing this week in the Daily Mail, described as giant embarrassments, symbols of almost everything that is wrong with British defence policy. He has a good case. The aircraft carrier and her yet-to-be-completed sister, HMS Prince of Wales, are the largest ships ever built for the Royal Navy, costing a total of £6.2 billion. Their complicated construction, 6 shipyards spread throughout Britain, supplied the blocks or modules that were welded together in Rosyth, suggest that their purpose was as much about jobs and labour constituencies as about fulfilling a grand naval strategy. HMS Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier to take to the seas. Read more. Labour was the governing party during the carrier's gestation. Rosyth is next door to Gordon Brown's old constituency. I remember that in the 2010 election, Labour told the Fife electorate that it was the two-carrier party. Other parties, if elected, might renege on both, or cancel one, with the loss of thousands of jobs. It was a strange echo of the Dreadnought campaign, "We want aid and we won't wait," that had rung around Britain a century before. The Navy itself is sensitive to the charge that the two ships, in Hastings' words, represent delusions of grandeur. Iconic projects aren't always immediately appreciated, it says on its website. The Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building, Sydney Opera House, like HMS Queen Elizabeth, they've all had to overcome scrutiny and skepticism. But set aside the vision for now. The gripping things at the moment are the facts. About 3,000 workers in Rosyth and 8,000 workers elsewhere have been directly employed in the ship's construction. Each carrier is 280 meters long as 3 football pitches and longer than the Houses of Parliament. The Queen Elizabeth has a displacement weight of 65,000 tons, and contains 250,000 kilometers of electrical cable and 8,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable. Each carries a sailing crew of nearly 700, with 900 other berths available for aircrews, aircraft engineers, Royal Marines and civilians rescued in emergencies. The 9 decks that lie below the flight deck are home, among other things, to a bakery that can turn out 1,000 loaves a day and a larder that, at the start of an average 45-day voyage, will be packed with 66,000 sausages, 64,800 eggs and 12,000 tins of beans. When the Queen Elizabeth left Rosyth Dock, only 35 centimeters separated the hull from each side of the lock, and only 50 centimeters lay between the keel and the lock bottom. A high tide was needed to float the ship into the Firth of Forth, and then it had to wait until the tide sank again so that its superstructure could get under the 3 bridges that stand between Rosyth and the North Sea. Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest time-lapse footage of HMS Queen Elizabeth maneuvering out to sea. In my days as a little admiral, there was only one bridge, the 3 famous red cantilevers that carried the railway. I saw it every day from the kitchen window. Its northern end lay only a few hundred yards from our house. The bridge had attracted tourists from the day it opened, in 1890. And the post office in the village was always well stocked with postcards from Valentines of Dundee that described it as the 8th wonder of the world. Long captions recorded how more than 5,000 men had labored day and night for 7 years to build it, with materials that included 740,000 cubic feet of granite and 6,500,000 rivets. On the evidence of the little ships that could be seen in the foreground, the cards hadn't changed since Victorian times, and it may be that they were among the First examples of a trend, British achievements expressed as proud little lists of facts and figures, of which the publicists for HMS Queen Elizabeth have produced the latest example. As I leaf through my Janes now, it hardly seems possible that I can have witnessed the maritime age the book describes. I caught the naval bug when I was 9 or 10 from a friend at the village school, whose widowed mother ran the post office and sold the cards. Colin had 3 older brothers, but none now lived at home, so he and his mother lived alone together in a little house on the edge of a bay that dried to mud at low tide, when the blackened timbers of abandoned boats would make their regular reappearance. One of his brothers served as a petty officer aboard HMS Eagle, then one of the largest of the Navy's 17 aircraft carriers. Another was a ship's carpenter on a BP tanker. A third had returned from deep-sea work to skipper one of the ferries that the road bridge would later replace. They left behind flat-bottomed ship models that we could push across the carpet, as well as a recent edition of Jane's fighting ships, which could be consulted for details of every grey-painted vessel that passed by, and there were many then, from stately two-funnel cruisers all the way down to the little minesweepers that came and went from Port Edgar, lying astern like ducklings. Later I acquired a copy of Jane's fighting ships for myself, or rather I was given it, when the biggest house in the village, a large Victorian villa, was cleared of stuff when it's untidy. And that man happens to be the biggest comedian in the world, with tours that sell out football. I've warships, not connecting them, until I saw the film The Cruel Sea, with the actual business of destruction and death. As I leaf through it now, it hardly seems possible that I can have witnessed the maritime age the book describes. As well as 19 aircraft carriers, the Navy possessed 5 battleships, 24 cruisers, 82 destroyers, 180 frigates, 57 submarines, 2 monitors, 3 fast minelayers, 195 minesweepers, and numerous small craft and auxiliaries. Inside HMS Queen Elizabeth. In pictures read more. Today it has 77 commissioned ships in all, only 19 of which, 6 destroyers and 13 frigates, can be described as significant surface combatants. Of course, the Navy in 1955 still lingered as an imperial fleet, and in any case many of its ships were mothballed in reserve. Even so, in an age of terrorism, piracy and growing refugee and migrant flows, the British fleet seems remarkably small, enfeebled by the drain of money into the giant carrier project and the vast costs associated with the renewal of the Trident submarine fleet. Its personnel now number fewer than 30,000. What is the point of HMS Queen Elizabeth and her sister? What is the vision? The former First Sea Lord Baron West of Spithead said in 2004 they were crucial for expeditionary warfare. The present Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, says they will enable the UK to tackle multiple and changing threats across the globe. The ship's commander, Captain Jerry Kidd, says, "We are an island nation, absolutely dependent on trade by sea, and law and order on the world's sea routes. An aircraft carrier sends a real message to allies, and potential enemies, that we mean business." His ship runs on outdated software, Microsoft Windows XP, and will take far fewer aircraft, the Lockheed Martin F-35, than originally planned. Also, big ships are vulnerable and less heavily defended. This week a spokesman for the Russian Defense Ministry, reacting to some boastful remark by Fallon, said that the HMS Queen Elizabeth amounted to nothing more than a huge, easy naval target. It is, apart from all that, a disappointingly ugly ship. Nonetheless, Britain managed to build it. That fact alone deserves a cheer from the little admirals who still survive in so many of us.